certainly want to thank all of our fellow plaintiffs and supporters here from the various aspects of the community here in Fremont and surrounding areas. My name is Anthony Prince. I'm one of the organizers and the attorney for the Fremont Homeless Union and the California Homeless Union Statewide Organizing Council. And we are one of the plaintiffs, the Fremont Union, our local union here, and our California Organizing Council are plaintiffs in this lawsuit, along with Christi, Northern California, Faith in Action, Braided Bridge, and of course the Mission Peak Unitarian Universalist congregation. You recognize them by the purple shirts here? We're going to hear from them in just a minute.
I listened in on the meeting that you had, the virtual meeting, and so if you don't mind kind of explaining why they get rid of just aiding and abetting, it doesn't really change much.
I think for this one,
that'd be great.
I mean, the basic thing is that if something is a crime and someone assists the perpetrator in the commission of the crime, they're aiding and abetting, and they can be charged with that crime. It's as simple as that. That's in the California Penal Code, and it's also in the Fremont Municipal Code. And the fact that them deleting it from this ordinance has zero effect. It's completely deceptive, and I think the reason they're doing it is because there was so much indignation and people were condemning that. But the fact of the matter is that why do you think they put that in there to start with? I'll tell you why. They didn't have to, because it's already in the code. They did it to frighten people. They did it to tell people, if you help, you're gonna be charged too. That's the only reason for putting that in there. And now they've withdrawn it, and but it has no effect on the risk that a person who's helping a perpetrator break the law is going to be prosecuted. It's as simple as that. You can't make something unlawful and then say, well, Joe can break the law, but Joe can be the trigger man, but if you hand him the gun and you're the lookout person, you're okay. You can't say that. So it's really fraudulent for the city to be making these representations. But unfortunately, the focus this back and forth about that has shifted the focus away from the core of the ordinance itself, which is to criminalize conduct that is unavoidable if you're unhoused. And so that we're going to try to put the focus back where it belongs, which is on that. So if charitable community and community members want to avoid being charged as well, you don't charge. Aiding and abetting is not a separate crime. It's a pathway. It's a means by which you can charge someone with a crime, someone who assists another. But the only way that so long as it remains a crime, then anyone who in this case provides a tent, knowing that the person is going to use the tent, and if using the tent is against the law, which Fremont has made it, well, then you've aided and abetted. So what we have to do is get rid of that law. That's the bottom line. And if we're not focused on that, then we're missing the point entirely.
My name is Catherine Ruby. That's Katherine. Last name Rubie. I am currently a private citizen, but I was a member and leader of Fremont for Everyone up until recently, when I had to resign my leadership position due to health reasons. I became homeless in 2019 because I have multiple disabilities, and between age discrimination and disabilities, my income potential kept going down, and eventually I couldn't afford to pay my rent. I knew at the time if I didn't pay my rent, I would have an eviction, and an eviction on my record would have resulted in not being able to get housing. So I entered a legal agreement to pay off all my past due rent, court costs, lawyers' fees, etc., which took me years to do, but it kept the eviction off my record, thank you. And I was able to get back into housing 6 months later through the HUD-VASH program. And I want to say that, people who are homeless are not lazy, they're not irresponsible, they're out there working really hard to get rehoused, and I consider myself a success case. And I feel like the criminalization of homelessness at this point in time is only going to exacerbate the problem, because it's going to keep people from getting jobs, keeping jobs, getting into housing, and facing the kind of situation that I could have faced in never getting back into housing. And I want everybody to have that chance to be able to get back into housing. Nobody ever should have to go through this. It's a traumatic experience, and I know that I had it better off than a lot of people, and I'm grateful for that. But at the same time, it's a traumatic experience, and I spent countless hours in the ER because of stress-related illnesses, and all of this is at the taxpayer expense. But getting me back into housing is actually a cheaper alternative, and I am so grateful to be housed at this point in time. However, my spouse, we separated a couple of years ago. She is homeless. She is fortunately couch surfing by the good graces of a member of the MPUUC. But Abet has been reluctant to provide assistance because of this ordinance. And what does that mean for my spouse? And even though we can't live together, I still have compassion for her situation, and I am very afraid for her. And I hate this situation, and I've been fighting this for the last 6 years, and I'm going to continue to fight this in the way that I can. But it's frustrating because we have a city council that's working opposite of what we need to do.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Marilyn Harris. I'm an individual. I'm under Hard at Work online. That's my business. I'm supportive of the plaintiffs who got a lawsuit. I am unhoused. Most people look at me and they say, "You're unhoused? You don't look unhoused." Oh, am I supposed to look like something? So I'm just saying that I've already talked to Solomon and I said we need to get rid of the criminalization. We're not criminals. We're citizens. Most of us work, and yet we just can't afford the rent right now. And they're not willing to build anything for lower income people either. That's their mandate. They want us to disappear, go somewhere else. So for my final point is housing, not handcuffs.
My name is Grace Light Shepherd. I am a single mother. I'm disabled. I have 2 children who are straight-A students in the Fremont School District. I'm really trying to be able to stay here until my son graduates next year. At least that long. We've been pushed out. We've lived here for over 2 decades, but it's just not affordable anymore. And we're currently in an RV, and we're just trying to keep him in school. He's doing excellent, and my daughter graduated summa cum laude. And I just, their community's here, their family's here. This is where they grew up, ever since elementary school. So it hurts a lot to feel just completely ignored and pushed out by the community, and just how cruel some things I've heard. But I have also heard a lot of positive things, and we are going to be representing our stories and fighting back for this, for everyone.
Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Beth Schaefer. I'm the president of Mission Peak Unitarian Universalist congregation here in Fremont. We're a faith organization that has been here for 30 years, and we are very concerned about this ordinance and about what is happening to unhoused people here in Fremont. Our faith calls upon us to be generous to all people, and to especially seek out and help those who are from communities who are often pushed aside and disregarded and not treated fairly. Clearly this describes the unhoused people here in Fremont. We want to reach out with generosity toward these people to help them with food and clothing and shelter and whatever they need. And we want to be able to look at our homeless friends and not be concerned that they could become criminalized, that they could become criminals at any point. So we're very concerned, and we're very glad to be joining the lawsuit. We look forward to seeing a better situation come true for the people in Fremont, and to have everyone work through this issue together as a community, and to see the result as people who hopefully are many fewer people who are unhoused, but also those who are unhoused are able to take care of themselves, and others like our faith organization are able to help take care of them. In the words of one of our leaders, under the work of citizenship, he describes a poem, Howard Thurman, and he says, in short, to know that our true wealth is the welfare of all beings and the planet that we all call home.
Hi, I'm Peggy Rahman, R-A-H-M-A-N. I'm president of the National Alliance on Mental Illness, Alameda County affiliate. Our position is extremely simple. NAMI has a position locally within Alameda County, California, and nationally opposed to criminalization of mental illness, and to keep people that have mental illness out of jails and into treatment. And this ordinance will just make it much harder for us to carry out our mission. I will also say that in Alameda County we have a lot of support groups for people that have mental health conditions, as well as for family members. And I can tell you this is a real issue for family members and for people in our community that have mental illness themselves. Homelessness is a real issue, and the issue of rape of young women, I don't want to go into the horror stories, but we hear them every month. We hear 2 or 3 stories about that. This is a very serious issue, and people need to care, and people need to... This ordinance that makes homelessness, I call it the homeless exclusion movement. We don't want to have these homeless folks excluded from our society because they are part of our families. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Toni Shellman, T-O-N-I, last name is like Shell, S-A-G-L-L-E-N. I'm part of the Tri-City Interfaith Council, Compassionate Fremont, Pax Christi Fremont, and something else I can't, St. James Episcopal Church. I think, as a Christian, I know that we follow the golden rule, which is why there's such a good thing. And as a part of the Interfaith organization, I know that every religion has very similar words, almost exactly the same. It's something that we all believe in. And I think you don't even need to be a part of a religion. I think most people feel, you want other people to treat you like you want to be treated. And I keep thinking of the phrase, but for the grace of God, go on. I mean, any of us in the economical climate we have now, who knows who will be homeless next. And so if you can't think about the other people, this could be happening to you. So I just think it's right that we want to take care of all of the neighbors, whether they're in a house or not. Thank you.
We are definitely looking at adding plaintiffs to the lawsuit. We anticipate filing an amended complaint where we will add parties, individuals, and organizations. So I would like you to talk with Robbie and Jason here. We want to get a plaintiff class in this lawsuit that's representative of diversity. So people in the RVs, single moms, the students. We want to talk with you, brother, about the possibility of adding some of the younger people who are staring homelessness in the face to this lawsuit. Organizations that have a stake in it. We want to talk with you about becoming plaintiffs. We feel it will have a significant persuasive power to add additional plaintiffs to this lawsuit. The court sees the breadth and depth of concern in the diversity of Fremont. We think it will make a difference. So we fully expect the City Council to enact the so-called amended ordinance. When you make a statement that is not true and persons rely upon that statement to their detriment, there's a legal term for that, and it's called fraud. And what is happening here is that the city is essentially perpetrating a fraud by falsely reassuring people, especially in the faith-based communities, the charitable communities, that you're going to be okay. You're not going to be okay. Just check out American history. Check out the prosecutions of those who came to the assistance of the runaway slave, those who came to the assistance, of the downtrodden. Look at the number of people who are in jail today because they assisted someone who, under circumstances where providing that assistance was illegal. So we want to say, first of all, that we're going to try to clarify this as much as we can. The second thing is we are seeking a preliminary injunction. The standard for getting a preliminary injunction or temporary restraining order is to show that harm, irreversible, irreparable harm, is imminent. We have a substantial body of evidence, declarations, and from other source materials to show that that is going to happen if the city enforces this ordinance. And so I think we'll be able to satisfy that element of obtaining injunctive relief. The second element is we have to show that it's in the public interest not to enforce this ordinance. We have a city council. If you go online, you'll see this city council endorsed the compassion charter, 13-point compassion charter. It is on public record of talking about what's good for the community, what's in the public interest. The staff report for this ordinance admitted that money would be diverted away from programs to house the unhoused into enforcement of this ordinance. Is that in the public interest? I don't think so. What's in the public interest is to have the city restrained from enforcing this measure. And finally, in terms of the long-range perspective on this case, we intend to prosecute this case no matter what happens. We do not know what the court will do. We have no way of knowing. We hope, and we're cautiously optimistic, that we are going to get an order. We're going to get a restraining order. We're cautiously optimistic. But if we don't, we continue to prosecute this lawsuit for as long as it takes. This is ground zero. This is our Selma, Alabama, right here. I'm telling you, it is. Do you think in Selma they had the conception then that they were at doing something historic? They didn't. But we have the lens of history looking back, so we can appreciate, we can have a self-awareness of what we're doing. You know what I'm trying to say? And that's why the national attention that this case has brought is to our advantage. And that also puts responsibilities on us to live up to that national attention and do the right thing here. So we hope that everyone here will continue not just to show support, but to expand, intensify, escalate that support. Let's have the ministers sermonize and say, how can you worship the homeless man on Sunday and step over the homeless man on Monday? How can you do that? We want the students to think about the power and the message you bring when you get up and you say, we're walking out of here. Because we'll walk out now rather than be pushed into the street tomorrow, rather than become homeless tomorrow, because this city would rather spend funds to persecute the homeless than to help children and seniors, graduating seniors over there at Washington High School. So we need to escalate, we need to broaden out our fight, we need to show that the fight is one for all and all for one. We're preparing the various motions that we have to file now because the city has indicated that they have every intention of going forward and enforcing the ordinance. We still hope that we can persuade the court to encourage the parties to come to the table and move away from a confrontational approach. But we don't seek battle, but we don't run away from it. So with that, unless there's anything more, I want to thank everyone here, and I'm certainly available, and other homeless union officers available for the media. Thanks so much.
Okay, Lauren with ABC7. We're seeing different ordinances in cities throughout the Bay Area. Do you think once this gets to in front of the DA, regardless of county, we could see persecution in these cases?
Yes, well, that's a good question. You use the word persecution. It's a prosecution, but in this case, it is also persecution. I think that the question is an excellent question. Are we going to see more of this? You better believe it. I think we have to consider what's happening here within the broader context of what is happening here in California, where you have a governor, for example, who signed an amicus brief, who filed a personal amicus brief in the case of Johnson versus Grants Pass, begging the Supreme Court to uphold that awful ordinance in Grants Pass, Oregon, which made it a crime to possess a blanket, a crime to possess a pillow. The governor of the state of California, the wealthiest state in the United States, signed a personal amicus brief saying, yes, that's the kind of ordinance we need. And that same governor issued an order, an executive order, mandating that on state land, any homeless encampment that was on state land needed to be cleared. So we need to pay attention to what's going on here. We need to pay attention. The message that is coming from the highest ranks of the political leadership of this state, and that goes down to the state attorney generals, which we hope that Mr. Bonta can steer his way clear of that kind of misuse and abuse by the highest elected official in the state of California, the governor. Secondly, we are seeing increased prosecutions, not just of homeless people, and not just of people that are trying to assist homeless people. Because if you think that they're not coming after people who provide food, talk to the Food Not Bombs people. Talk to the people who have, the ministers who have been handcuffed and arrested in Marysville and Yuba County. Talk to the people who have been told, you got to close that kitchen down because you don't have a permit. It's not healthy for you to be providing food because you don't have a permit, you don't have a license to do that. But it's perfectly okay for that homeless person to go hungry that night. And you know there are irreversible medical issues when you go for a day, 2 days without eating. And we already have a population that is whose life expectancy, the unhoused in this country, is anywhere from 20 to 30 years less than the average person in the United States. So if you think, to answer your question, are we going to see more of these prosecutions? Unfortunately, I believe we will. But at the same time, we're going to see more resistance like this. Because the more, as I said, the broader the net they throw out, the more different and diverse elements of the community that they criminalize, the more resistance is going to be developed. And this is a shining example of it. And the demographic of the unhoused in this country is changing rapidly. And I would urge the media, I would urge the journalists, and some of you have done this, to talk to the people in the camps, in the shelters, in the RVs, and find out who they are. And you know what you'll find out? They are a reflection of the demographic of this country. The fastest growing segment of the unhoused today in this country are retired workers. Right up there, a close second, are families, children. You don't even see them. They're the hidden homeless. They're in those weekly rate motels. Those hotels that are hidden behind the airports and industrial and the old sections of town, paying outrageous amounts of money to these hotel operators so they can be safe, and in some ways hidden because they fear that their children will simply be taken from them, that they'll be blamed for being negligent simply because they can't afford a place to live. We're talking about people who work for Disneyland. I saw last month that people who work for Disneyland had a protest, saying we can't afford housing, we can't afford to pay the rent where we live. Disneyland. And you saw about 3 years ago where the graduate teaching assistants at UC Santa Cruz went on strike because they couldn't afford to live in the city in which they're teaching. These are PhD graduate teaching assistants. We have members, we have a homeless union local in Santa Cruz. And they were living in their cars in the student parking lot and the faculty parking lot. And here come the UC police during the night, banging on the window, show us your ID. So I think what we're looking at is a demographic that is reflective of the demographic of the United States. And that's because housing is becoming so out of reach, increasingly out of reach. Rents. I talked to a woman today who's paying $950 for a one-room studio apartment. And they keep raising it. And her choice is either pay it or get out, because they're just all too happy to empty out that building and wait till some speculator comes in, purchases it, and makes it permanently inaccessible to a working class person. Am I right about that?
Yes.
This is a systemic thing. It's a systemic thing. And we're digging in for the long haul here. And that's the message that we have to put out there. I mean, look at all the people who got burned out of Pacific Palisades and Altadena. And they were wealthy. And the insurance company doesn't care. They don't care. You can be wealthy today and homeless tomorrow. You think the insurance company's going to cut you some slack? I got news for you. They won't. They won't. So we're talking about something much broader than Fremont. We're talking about something which is emblematic of a much broader crisis. I'm sorry.
Darvasanune Washington High School Hatchet. So I'm a high schooler, obviously, and this new ordinance means that many of the kids in my school who go out to volunteer, who help nonprofits in the community pass out aid, distribute resources to the community, they can't distribute these resources anymore because of the new ordinance. What solutions do you suggest for these high schoolers who want to help the community but can't right now due to the new ordinance?
The solution, I would first of all, thank you for being here, young man. And you're a high school. It's a high school newspaper.
Washington
just down the street.
Washington High School.
Out of that way.
Okay. Well, I don't have to tell you that that homelessness amongst young people is skyrocketing. Every school district in the United States by law has to have a homeless student liaison. The very fact that there's such a thing as a homeless student liaison says a lot.
Yeah, it does.
And you know what we say in the homeless union? We say it's hard to do your homework when you don't have a home.
Yeah.
And so your right to public education is being compromised by the fact that many homeless students are homeless and don't have those. They don't have what they need, the material items and the ability to learn and an equal opportunity to learn as others. And you're asking what could be done? We'll come out and help you do it. We'll talk to those high school students. We have high school students, chapters of the homeless union. We have a children's homeless union in Sacramento. And the voice of the young people is critical. And I'm glad you asked that question, because a lot of people don't know that, and it's true in your school, the seniors who are graduating and who have been protected for their high school time under the McKinney-Vento Act, there's financial assistance to see to it that a homeless high school student gets assistance so they can complete their education. But when they're finished and they graduate and they finish that senior year, you know what happens? There's no more assistance. There's no more assistance. And we were I was at a convention yesterday, over the weekend rather, California Federation of Teachers. And one of the state representatives, Dave Cortese, was reporting that something in the neighborhood of 27,000 graduating high school homeless students are going to be cut off from the financial assistance. And you know what some of the cities are doing? They're spending city money. They're going to take some of that money and they're going to try to help the kids who will otherwise be cut off and into the streets, as you said. How about that, Fremont? How about Fremont? How about taking some of that $1 million that they admit they're going to spend enforcing this unconstitutional ordinance and use it to help keep the kids off the street safe when they lose this McKinney-Vento money? This is one of the most, thank you. Yeah, that's right. This is a criminal, shameless waste of resources that this city is perpetrating. That's the other side of the equation we should always remember, is what is being lost when they lay out the funds and rob the taxpayers so they can finance these dragnets and these unconstitutional ordinances. And we'd like to talk to you a little bit more about this situation.
And then you also mentioned that the media speak to the unhoused people in the community. So recently I went to the encampment near Irvington and Washington Boulevard, and I spoke with Maurice, who said that he did try reaching out and seeking aid. He was in the Homeless Navigation Center for a few weeks, but he's saying that the city just isn't providing enough. What resources do you think could be built in the existing states like the Homeless Navigation Center or other responses to really direct to the community what can be done?
I would say, well, I don't know why you're over there. You should be. That's what I'm saying.
A lot of land is going
Speak at city council.
This is the kind of this is what gives me hope. What gives me hope is you guys are here, especially these young people who are raising these issues. I think. Let me just say. You want to answer that question?
Well, I have a little bit of an answer. I belong to a couple of the organizations represented here in the Tri-City Interfaith Council. Recently had a presentation from the Homeless Services Coordinator of the City of Fremont. And we learned that nearly a year ago, the City of Fremont adopted a plan that would include more services, more navigation centers, etc., but they haven't funded it. So that's part of the answer.
That's why we're going to help the city.
Yeah, maybe this money that they're using to hire this consultant that's not talking to us, that money could go to help fund the plan that they supposedly have.
I want to begin by saying that there's certain misinformation has been repeatedly publicized by the city and its various representatives, and to the effect that the action that's going to be taken tonight in amending the ordinance, the challenge chapter 8.90, as you guys are aware, the city intends to delete language in the enforcement section of the ordinance which holds that someone who assists anyone in violating the camping ban and the associated restrictions that entail that camping, that are part of that camping ban, can be charged as having aided, abetted, and concealed that violation of that law. Now, the fact that the city is going to delete that language does not equal a grant of immunity to someone who assists someone else in breaking the law. We have said this repeatedly, and apparently there's still confusion out there because the city continues to falsely represent that they now have eliminated any obstacle to the faith-based organizations, the community organizations, the charitable institutions, and ordinary people here in Fremont or anywhere else. And somehow or other, they now are free to distribute materials and items, survival items, food, water, sleeping bags, tents, bedrolls, tarpaulins. The fact of the matter is that it's simply not true, that there is no way that a law can be passed that makes something unlawful, makes the performance of a certain act of crime, and then says, well, if you assist that person in breaking that law, don't worry about it. There's no such thing. The Fremont Municipal Code still has Chapter 1.10, .010, the very first chapter. It was enacted in, I believe, 1990, and it's been in the Fremont Municipal Code all that time, and it's still there, and it will remain there after they delete the language, that same language, those same words, they delete. If they delete that from the ordinance, the provisions to charge someone with the same crime as the perpetrator, if you aid and abet the commission of a crime, you are charged with that crime. Aiding and abetting is not a separate offense. It is a pathway to bring a criminal charge against someone other than the perpetrator. Okay? That remains not only on the books here in Fremont as part of the municipal code, but it is also part of the California Penal Code. And that's why if you read what is in Chapter 1 here at the Fremont Municipal Code, it says that it is a requirement. If the city of Fremont makes anything unlawful, it must be also the fact that someone who assists in the violation of that law is aiding, abetting, and concealing. And they can be charged with that violation of that law. So I want to make that absolutely clear, to the extent that anyone is under the impression that they're going to be immune from the risk of criminal prosecution. So that's the first thing we want to clarify. I think the reason that the city has done that, though, is because of the tremendous opposition, some of you see back here, at this measure. Now, we have been fighting measures like this for about 10 years here in California. We've had a fair amount of success in getting restraining orders, preliminary injunctions, and writs of mandate to prevent cities from enforcing anti-homeless laws like this. But I will tell you that this is the first time that we're aware of that the city put language into the anti-camping ordinance that specifically threatens a person with a charge, a criminal charge, as an aider, abetter, and concealer. Why? Why did they put that language in there? To start with, knowing that it was surplusage. They didn't need that language in order to have the legal authority, or actually the legal responsibility, to charge an accessory to a crime with that crime. Why did they put it in there? I'll tell you why. They wanted to chill, they wanted to frighten, they wanted to intimidate. They wanted to say, not only are we going to make it a crime for you to be homeless in the city of Fremont by way of you can't be in a tent, you can't use what they term camping paraphernalia, you can't have a tarpaulin, you can't be in some kind of structure that you might have constructed in order to protect yourself from the elements. You can't do any of those things. And by the way, people of Fremont, don't try to help me, because you'll be charged as an aider, abetter, and a concealer. That's why they put that in there, to frighten the community, to scare the community, and warn people, we're going to get rid of these homeless, and don't you get in our way. Don't you get in our way. But what happened? What happened? What happened is people were not intimidated. People were not frightened. People were not scared. They stood up. Look at all these people behind me. They're emblematic of not just what you see, but dozens, hundreds, thousands of decent people here in the city of Fremont. Churchgoers, members of faith-based organizations, charitable institutions, students, children, organizations that exist for the sole purpose of helping their fellow human beings. So this case has received national and even international attention because it's emblematic of what's happening in this country, where the more and more segments of the population are being caught up in this dragnet of the determination by the powers that be to get the riffraff out of the way, to get rid of these homeless people so we can make our city a more favorable, attractive prospect for venture capital, for the next tech center, the next ag tech center, the next, city of the future. Oh, but we got to get rid of these people that are in the way. We don't need them anymore. So that's the first thing I want to make absolutely clear, is that the reason that the city put that in that ordinance in the first place was sheer intimidation, and it failed. Second thing I want to give us an update here, and that is just where we are with the case. We have been talking with the representatives of the city attorney, and by the way, the city has now contracted with a outside counsel. Your tax dollars at work. You're going to pay one of these lawyers at a firm which is, we're familiar with them. We've had them in some of our cases. And in the conversations that we've had in the last few days, we made it clear that we intend to do all that's necessary to see to it that prevent the harm, to prevent someone who's in intent right now, and you saw photographs on the front pages of the papers. We We have members of our union. We have unhoused people in tents, under tarpaulins. We have people that have sleeping bags. Just Saturday, it was a tremendous, and not just the first time either, that the church and some of the other faith-based organizations and Fremont for Everyone, the FFE organization, turned out with this beautiful show of, some might call it charity, I call it solidarity. You've gone beyond charity. You know why? Because you're standing with a group of people who have no choice but to fight. And you're not going to compromise. You're not going to say, well, it's okay for you to be criminalized so long as the city of Fremont says that we're safe. They've said, no, all for one and one for all. We know for a fact that the rights that are taken away from one segment of the population, eventually those rights are going to be lost to the greater population. And so it's all for one and one for all. It's conversations we've had with the city attorney and now the outside counsel. Our objective there was to see if we could persuade them to refrain from enforcing the ordinance, to get them to agree to pause on the enforcement so that we could prepare a briefing schedule. As the judge indicated, we're supposed to set up a briefing schedule now, and so that we could possibly persuade them to come to the table and talk about the issues here in the city of Fremont. What is the justification that they provided, the pretext that they have provided to justify Chapter 8.90, the new ordinance criminalizing to a degree that we have not seen previously the unhoused? They say, well, it's health and safety. It's issues of public health. It's issues of fires. It's issues of some of the hazards that we see in the encampments. It's issues of our infrastructure, of our rivers, our riverbeds, and whatnot. We're interested in those issues. Who is more concerned about the hazards in the city of Fremont than people who are unhoused and face those hazards every single day? So we said, let's sit down like we have with other cities in California and say, let's come to the table and let's talk about these things. If that's your reason why you're passing this draconian ordinance, then let's talk about them, because it is possible to remedy those things where they exist. It is possible to eliminate fire hazards. It's possible to eliminate health and safety hazards. And it's not necessary in the process of eliminating them to put those who are in the camps in a more dangerous position by breaking up the camps and dispersing people into wooded areas, hiding away by themselves. Something in the neighborhood of 25% of women who are homeless in the United States, and it's true in Fremont, are fleeing domestic violence. They have safety in these encampments. We have proven this. We have provided evidence in any number of our cases to show that. We have declarations in this case right now that we are on file in our case from women and members of our community who said, but if not for the people in this camp looking out for me, looking out for one another, I would be at risk out there on the street. All right? And so we said, let's sit down and talk. If that's really the reason, if that's really the motive for this ordinance, let's talk. Oh, but they don't want to talk. They have turned down our proposal to come to the table. We'll pause the litigation. They'll pause enforcement. We come to the table and we talk because unhoused residents of Fremont are still residents of Fremont.
That's right.
We're hearing echoes here of certain members of the community, certain in our history, we're hearing echoes of say certain people have no rights that some other people are bound to respect. You remember that? That was a Dred Scott decision. And we're hearing echoes of that same sentiment, that certain people, based on their circumstance, which is unavoidable because of the inaccessibility and unaffordability of traditional housing, they have no choice but to be out here barely trying to survive. But guess what? They have no rights that anyone is bound to respect. Well, we're here to tell them, that's not true. And we're standing up for those rights. Those rights belong to all of us, regardless of station in life, rich or poor, black or white, man or woman, whatever. Those are inalienable rights and enshrined in the founding documents of this country, in the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. You have a right to be protected against acts of the government that affirmatively increase the risk of harm to you. That is substantive due process. That is the 14th Amendment. And that is our chief legal theory as we go forward in this case. One of the aspects of this case, which is so vital, so important, and what is at stake is so germane to what this country is supposed to be all about, is the free exercise of religion. The First Amendment protects against government interference with the free exercise of religion. And so when the members of this church and the members of Faith in Action and the members of Pax Christi go out with the tarpaulins and the tents and the food and the water and the sleeping bags and the bedrolls and the medical service and the hygiene equipment, the things which keep people alive, they are carrying out their mission. They're carrying out what God, in whatever form they understand God to be, to carry out that work. To carry out that work. And they're trying to tell us now. They're trying to tell us now, well, don't worry about it. They can give. They can go ahead and pass out these things. Of course, they're just limiting it to food and water. You notice that? Yeah. You notice that? Remember, food, clothing, and shelter. They took a big X on shelter. No, we'll take that one out. Yep. We'll take that one out. But what they're telling you, what they're telling our faith community, what they're telling decent people, what they're telling us when we look at free exercise of religion, is that you can give, but the person to whom you give has no right to possess, has no right to use. Now there's something in the First Amendment also, freedom of speech. Freedom of speech is not just talking, it's not just the words, it's not just verbal. It's conduct that carries a message. Conduct that carries a message. And what is the message when we go out? Where people are living on the street and people are living in cardboard boxes and living in tents. The message is that this country is failing to house its people. That's the message. When we bring food and necessities, we're saying that in the wealthiest country in the nation, where they grow enough food in the Central Valley of this state to feed the whole United States, that you have people that are hungry. That's the message when you bring the food out there. And that is protected under the First Amendment. So it is a source of great pride. We should all feel great pride in the fact that the religious community has stepped up in the way that it has. And I know that they considered the risks, and there are risks that they assume in coming on board as organizational plaintiffs in this case. So I'll stop